I hate the super version of Goku. Something only incredibly loosely related to that idea after the intro. Goku's decision to not be restored to life after the Cell Games is based on one of the most ludicrous, maybe even delusional ideas he comes up with in the story, and that's saying a lot, especially since he had just, right before that, tried to turn Gohan into some kind of guardian child soldier for the planet. This is somehow dumber because at least that had some grounding in a rational idea. He is fundamentally mistaken about being the reason threats to Earth keep emerging. In fact, without him, the Earth would almost certainly have been either conquered or destroyed by any number of evil forces. For those who don't believe me, let's go over the main threats from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and look at why all but one-ish of them are not really his fault. The Red Ribbon Army was already around before Goku begins his adventure, and considering their size and numbers, was likely around for a while, maybe even before he landed on Earth. Not sure though. Tien was well on his way to becoming an assassin, i.e. a massive problem. Goku is the reason he stopped from becoming a killer for hire like Tao, and frankly probably one that is far more dangerous than Tao. King Piccolo, Goku's presence probably only sped his revival up. Anything from maybe a small earthquake in the wrong place, or a curious digger could have broke the Mafuba at any time. If Pilaf could find it, anyone could have stumbled on it. Raditz, Nappa, and Vegeta. The Saiyans, or Frieza, not sure which, had already earmarked the Earth, although at a very low priority. It would have been attacked by them eventually, and Goku, Piccolo, and the Z-Fighters are the only things that stop the Saiyans from wiping out humanity. And the Z-Fighters would not have even been as strong as they were without the events surrounding Goku, assuming some variation of the team existed at all. Frieza was a universal tyrant attempting to conquer everything, and was fine with casually erasing life-sustaining planets if they held no valuable, at least to him, resources. He would have wanted to eventually conquer Earth either way, and since the Saiyans had orders to attack Earth, and they worked for Frieza, it was probably going to be sooner rather than later, relatively speaking. But even without the Saiyans' defeat, he would have come to Earth eventually. The androids. Gero was already making androids and other machines to augment the Red Ribbon's forces for a fairly long time, definitely before Goku got involved. The only difference here is he buckled down and made vastly stronger ones to kill Goku. Honestly, even if Goku didn't exist, Gero would have eventually made very powerful androids to counter people like Roshi, Crane, Krillin, potentially Piccolo Daimo, aka King Piccolo, and Garlic Jr. I believe this is reasonable because I find it doubtful Gero and the Red Ribbon Army would be willing to share power or let such threats run around unchecked. Cell. This may be the only threat Goku kind of caused in the loosest definition of the word. It is true Gero creates Cell to kill Goku, however Gero himself is more than arrogant enough to play God. He is also incredibly petty and vengeful. There is no doubt, eventually a threat his normal machines couldn't take would surface, and he would make something at least loosely similar to Cell, just probably not as absurdly powerful. In this scenario, it might be a chimera combination of Tien Han, Master Roshi, Crane, Krillin, Tao, and depending on the preceding events, even have some Namekian in there too. It's not as far-fetched as some may think. Now, even though Buu was not a factor in Goku's decision, I'm still going to point out that Babidi would have come to Earth for Majin Buu either way. It would have merely taken longer for Babidi to hatch his egg without two Super Saiyans making one of the dumbest decisions in Dragon Ball Z. So, are all of these arguments flawless? No, probably not. But the fact that they can be made with simple logic should tell us that Goku really didn't think this through, at all. And nobody else in universe seems to think of it either, at least not that I remember. But they were all exhausted from the preceding events and shocked by the decision, so I don't blame them. Except for Bulma. I will gladly blame that self-absorbed narcissist for anything I can get away with blaming her for. Goku blaming himself for this particular issue is kind of weird, considering it's his resolution to a lot of these enemies that causes later issues, but he himself does not cause said enemies to actually exist. Most of them would exist in some form, with or without him. Most, if not all of them, would still be a threat to the Earth. And without him, no one, at least no one strong enough, would be there to stop at least several of said threats originally. It's important to this argument to remember that Super Goku is essentially a different person than OG Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z Goku. The Goku of Super, at least the anime, I haven't read the Super manga, is the embodiment of everything that the original Goku was worried about when he refused revival. He constantly causes issues and will even outright attack someone who doesn't want to fight just because he thinks they're strong, and he's written to be some kind of near-deranged battle and training addict, which is way beyond out of character for him. He has always enjoyed a good fight, even in the earliest arc of Dragon Ball, but I don't remember him ever attacking someone who had no desire to fight just so he could get his, fix. In fact, when Ader, or Android number 8, refuses to fight, Goku accepts the decision easily, even saving the android's life, despite it being clear that Ader is incredibly strong. Even as a kid, Goku didn't go out of his way to intentionally antagonize people, at least not to my recollection. Important to remember, I said intentionally. He did antagonize people on accident quite a bit back then. The Goku of OG Dragon Ball was, at least lore-wise, pure-hearted. If Super Goku tried to get on the Nimbus, he should fall right through, as there's nothing pure-hearted about most of Goku's actions in Super. I don't actually consider this nitpicking because, like I've said, he is made a completely different person in Super. In Super, it honestly sometimes feels like the writers or creators for Dragon Ball Super had just watched Dragon Ball Abridged from Team 4-Star and thought that was canon. I don't know if this is the case, but it would make sense, and it would be incredibly funny. Well, that's all for now, so I'll just say, thank you for listening to my inane rambling.